evicted, swept, and kicked. Evicted, swept, and kicked because settler towns like these don't give an ish.
From the lake Merritt to the LA, this week's Poor People's Radio podcast will focus on a new book released by Port Press, The On Tour Across Occupied Turtle Island, Cloud Marks, Planks, and Monuments which resist and washes and tells the truth about the Settler Blight of public and privately owned land while lifting up the stories of resistance. Resistance marks, as Tiny calls them, we will speak to Vic Torrea from the Indigenous Peoples Five about the removal of the Settler Blight and hear one of the poems from the book by D. Allen.
Definitely, his name was Junipero Serra, and I say was because um, these statues, all these statues all over this occupied continent, like represent genocide, right? So I always like to mention that this happened during the wake and the murder of George Floyd, in a moment in time where there was all of these uprisings happening left and right, for the liberation of our Black relatives, and all over the Bay Area. Even county officials were so scared of these like statues that represent genocide were going to be taken down that they were actually even organizing amongst themselves and taking them down willingly, like the one that happened over at so-called Coit Tower in Yalamu, San Francisco.
Yeah.
So on Indigenous Peoples Day 5, it was about a 90% all white demonstration that was organized anonymously by some Bay Area folks. I'm not sure who they were, but we just wanted to show support, so we pulled up. And we pulled up because we want to know the truth, and we pulled up also to build relationships with folks and to witness this statue being toppled. And as we were there, we were being violently threatened by a white man across the street, that made his way over across the street to where folks were being gathered and folks were sharing the original name of so-called San Rafael, which I can't recall right now. Please forgive me. And so people were gathered in front of the San Rafael Church of the mission. And just for a little context, there was 22 missions that were brought here in SoCal, California, starting with the mission in Kumi Islands in SoCal, San Diego. And they were established by this colonizer by the name of Junipero Serra, who has been canonized as a saint. And just for some historical context too, there was indigenous people, California natives, that were organizing against the canonization of this colonizer. The churches they're so close to us, and it's really important for us to learn this history because our relatives here, the Lashana were directly enslaved. Their ancestors were enslaved in Mission San Jose, which is now in so-called Fremont, and Mission Dolores, which is in Yalamo in San Francisco, across from Dolores Park. We ended up, just showing up and listening to what folks had to say. And like I mentioned, it was mostly white folks that were there, trying to get their little indigenous points, trying to get their little POC points, with cops right across the street just watching. Then all these like ropes started coming out of nowhere, and the statue just kind of went down. There was these messages of resistance in this statue that said colonizer, rapist, and like people were releasing all of this generational trauma that has been like stagnant in our bodies, right? The statue went down. These pigs from across the street basically like selected 1 to 5 people and kind of went after those folks. Didn't arrest no white people. And the folks that they got were mostly Two Spirit indigenous folks. And I happened to be a person that got caught up, and for the alleged toppling. And I feel kind of like, I used it as an opportunity to like one organize around it and shed light on the true history of this land and what has happened. And also to shed light that when these colonizers came, this mission development got here to California, they went for Two Spirit and Indigenous queer people first, queer folks, Two Spirit, those folks that were of more of the gender spectrum that's been here since time immemorial. in Turtle Island. They went for women and children. And so I was just kind of like took it as a message that creator wanted me to like support and uplift the voices of my relatives. And I feel like a lot of people that live in California don't really know about California Native history. So I took that responsibility of organizing around it with a lot of support from folks. We were able to form a little group, IP5, Indigenous Peoples Day 5. And folks were organizing against a DA that was trying to charge us with a hate crime. There was an exorcism that was performed the same week by Salvatore Cordileone, which is like the Archbishop for the Catholic Roman Empire in California, which I believe he like stepped down for like rape charges and child pornography, by the way. And so folks were actually writing letters, signing petitions for the charges to be dropped against Lori Frugoli that was trying to charge us, which is the DA for Marin County. And that's pretty much the kind of the brief history of what happened. And yeah. So now we're here years later, and now it's in that interview that we had like a few years back is actually like in the Untour book.
Now we're here with the Orange Cracker, right? Wiping away all that beautiful work that happened in that uprising time, right? And I just want to, I think it's even more important for us to lift up this liberation work. The fact that this even happened, the fact that there were some of these clan marks that were removed, some of this blight, some of the settler blight that was removed. And I'm just curious in terms of how you feel as a young Indigenous person when you see these clan marks. I mean, I know that they just become part of the world of AmeriClan, right?
Right, right.
But I wonder if there's any visceral or emotional feeling that you have, especially after doing that powerful move, which needs to happen all the time, okay?
Right.
But just some thoughts on that.
Oh, thank you for the question. Oh, well, most definitely. Like, I think we're surrounded by it that is so normalized, like in our lives for people to come and tourists, like even here in the Bay Area. Street names, churches left and right, city names, hospitals, national parks, like even names that have been passed down to like children's or even last names that we carry. And those are all representations of genocide that we feel in our bodies that we like. For example, for me, whenever I seen and wherever I see like a monument that's like dedicated, or even for example, like we were just at so-called Yosemite, and there was a plaque there that was talking about how like the city of Mariposa was like the first pioneer town. And it's talking about like all of these like, great things that they did and how the city like got burnt down, and like then they never like reestablished the city, but it's the first city, and then we need to like give them props for establishing this first city where, you know, the people of that land, the Sierra Miwok, were like enslaved, where there was also my people that were brought there, Yoemen people, to also like work those lands, you know, as like people are being like pushed away from their lands and being, you know, genocided against, like then you're bringing all these other indigenous people there, right? And then so then when those people, you know, as those people are being oppressed and they're passing down like these stories of survival to their kids, and then they're using these names like Yosemite or like Oakland, and you know, it's so normalized in our bodies. So that kind of shit pisses me off. And so like I always feel this very deep responsibility, and it doesn't matter like who I am around. Like I feel this responsibility that if I know, I need to make it known that the name of this land where I'm at, Oakland, that it's not Oakland, that is
Thank you.
that San Francisco, part of San Francisco is not San Francisco, is Yalamu.
Oh.
That you know, like that Vallejo, so-called Vallejo, is not Vallejo, that is like Cartoon. That who is Vallejo? A fucking colonizer, you know, that fucking went after our Pomo relatives, you know, like. So, you know, I always feel like this major responsibility of making this known from the youngest person to the eldest person that ever crosses my path, and I don't take it lightly. And I feel like I'm in this my spirit is in this body for a reason, and it's
Mm.
to be able to channel like messages and to be able to shed light and also be a storyteller, story keeper, and to be able to make those connections with the way that I was like, how I was born and raised here in Oakland and continue to be sustained here, how my family migrated here, how we were separated by this false man-made border, and how this mission system God perfectified. I don't even know if that's a word. I don't really care. But how it was perfectified in Mexico, like like 200 years before, 250 years before it actually like came to Kumi Island. So like our people in the South like suffer through this, right? And we're still so assimilated and still are living in those religious ways, right? Because everybody needs spirituality.
Mm.
And we are still so anti-indigenous even in our own like communities. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I feel this deep responsibility whenever I see these statues to talk about them, these cities names.
I
And also just like like the fact that those statues were being toppled down, like it's such a historic moment to be alive in, right?
Oh,
And I
that part.
think and I hope and I think that also like serves, or that it serves a purpose where people like that have that power are able to like organize with their cities and change park names and change city names. So
Russian.
yeah, as long as I'm here, like I'm gonna
That
keep
part.
speaking the truth.
Beautiful. Mote, ¿qué
Well,
contas?
well, just is kind of connected to what Big was saying, and thank you, Big, for being the warrior, being the guerrera, guerrerex, and being in the front lines, and like you're saying, speaking about this too, and Tiny too, the Poor Magazine, who wrote this book, right? Because we're definitely, it feels like a intellectual war, right? Where you have this administration literally trying to erase our people. Not only the way he now is calling the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of Americana, or whatever the nonsense, and also how realistic is it that we can rely on academia, we can rely on Google Maps. To tell the story of our people, right? Because those folks will erase us, and so power to you, Big, to this book, to Tiny, to this concept, right, of the Sagora Telantras, too, of bringing back, those names of these lands, of these creeks. And I feel the same as you guys too, that as long as we keep speaking of, as long as we keep reminding our future generations, really what happened of the genocide, of the stolen land, that we stand on.
Oh.
And yeah, keep saying it, in our poetry, in our art,
Mm.
in the way we move in the world. Yeah, because for me, it's a battle. It's a battle of erasure. They're trying to erase our people. These white supremacists trying to pretend. Not only indigenous people, but you heard he also wanna, shut down the African American. Where it shows the slavery happened and all the atrocities the America has done to be able to build this land.
Yeah.
Right.
And so yes, and lifting up to the indigenous people are still here.
Oh,
You know,
Um,
so thank you, Big, and
for sure. Vic, let's talk a little bit about Saturday and actually some of these events, just to because we want folks to come out and pray
right.
with us.
Mhm.
So we're going to occupied Coast Miwok lands, aka what the settlers call San Rafael, the site of this blight removal.
Mhm.
Um, Tell us who. I heard that we're gonna they'll be offering a beautiful prayer from relatives from that land. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so is this Saturday at 1 p.m. outside of Mission San Rafael. We're going to be gathered in the space where the remains of the statue are. And first and foremost, I've been very fortunate to build relationships with our neighboring tribes here. I do work for Socorro Tilantras, which is located in the Confederate villages of the Shaw Nation, and so the Coast Miwok are literally like diagonally across from the East Bay. And I've been very fortunate enough to be able to build relationships with Coast Miwok relatives and learn the traditional names also of their lands, and also like hear their language into existence existence as it's being brought back. So we're gonna be joined by my good friend Joe, and he's Coast Miwok and a very knowledgeable person that I'm very fortunate to call a friend and to learn this real history from, and learn and hear the language of the land being spoken. And he actually happened to be there that day, and we didn't even know that we were all there that day. So
Wow.
so O for Joe and all of the work that they do.
Oh,
Oh,
Their
that part.
culture there. They're also a language keeper and a speaker, and an incredible human being that does frontline work as well.
Ashe. Yeah, and Auntie Karina's going to join us. We're going to be having danza from our beautiful relatives, all of us from Teocalli and Prensa Pobre. We're also going to be having some warriors who are actually speaking from the book. I do want to say for listeners and viewers, it's riffing off another book that was a tour book, but tourism is extractive by design. Its intention is to extract money, resources, things, and perpetrate capitalism across Mama Earth. My mama used to teach some of the conscious young white people that would come to become our solidarity family of poor, that they teach white people you can go anywhere. Well, actually, you can't. That's a lie of settler colonialism,
That part.
right? That we know that none of our people, even indigenous people from Northern European indigenous people, didn't just go anywhere. You go with permission and protocol. You go with humility,
Right.
right? You go with prayer and love and an offerenda, an offering.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things about this untour book is it reclaims that space of visiting, of asking, of offering, as opposed to traveling and touring and taking and spending and basically using and exploiting, right? It reclaims that space because that other tour book, those places weren't safe for poor people or black and brown bodies, for disabled people to go to, for indigenous people to go to. Shout out to the Green Book. Shout out to a guide that was actually put out by Rasa Brothers and Sisters just for the community. We knew that in many places and spaces it wasn't safe for bodies to be. So in this book, in this beautiful sacred, vessel, it's really just a calling in. It's a calling in for a different type of moving across Mama Earth. And we welcome folks to come and pray with us. Pray in the spaces of genocide because that's what they are.
Right.
Right? And right now, with our relatives in Palestine, Ibaye, in Sudan, in Haiti, in West Papua, and Kashmir, and right here, we know that this settler colonial genocide is exported all across Mama Earth. And we need to recognize that it starts here. And oftentimes it starts with many people here who implicit or complicitly are enabling it to happen. So this for us is a prayer and it's an offering, but it's also a calling in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Vic, did you want to say anything else before we transition to D, who's going to read a poem from the book? Go ahead. Anything else?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I definitely was fortunate to be on tour with you in the beginning of the tour, and we went up to Seattle and to Suquamish.
oh,
We actually heard oral stories from a lot of the stories and interviews of how colonization has affected us, but also the resiliency of people and the survival and a lot of land liberation is happening, and also we pray for these places where genocide happened, but also pray for the next future generations, because this book and just how you're saying the orange cracker man, it's they're gonna press their propaganda and try to get rid of all of our books. This is so important, the work that y'all do. This book has so much information on it, literally from all all over Turtle Island. And I'm really grateful that this book exists and it talks about land liberation, the liberation of the West Berkeley Shellmouth. The work that we do here in Lashawn territory, and as well as an interview, as well as that happened with IP5 a few years ago, and so many other like beautiful stories and movements that we want to uplift, like the movement in Mauna Kea. Um, um, yeah, so I just feel really grateful to be able to like support y'all and like support with the next coming events here in these territories. So I hope to see y'all there and bring your best self forward and yeah, bring medicine to offer up.
Oh,
Be
Yes.
prepared
that
to
part.
listen and learn.
Oh, that's
Oh.
right. That's right. Because we need to repair, right? And so it's a calling in and an invitation for repair. I mean, people don't understand sometimes that is the root of reparations is repair.
Right.
Right? All settlers, all conscious settlers. This is a welcoming into repair. If you haven't, if you haven't started that decolonizing process, let's start that because
Right.
sweeping humans like we're trash
Right.
is another form of genocidal colonization, and it's happening. And we ran over a brother, the third relative, with a bulldozer because of that violence. Evaluated Edward James Oakley, um, and so many more. Shannon Marie Bigley, Cornelis Taylor. This is the work that we do every day. Listeners and viewers know us. This book is that extension of that work, and it's also a bringing in for everybody to participate. I want to shout out that there's so many powerful prayer warriors and poetry warriors in here. Tongo, Ayodele Wordslinger, um, Elizabeth Montenegro, uh, my brother D. Allen, a badass poet and warrior right here at Homefulness. We're going to transition to having him read his poem. And I want to say for listeners and viewers who aren't in the Bay Area, you can get the book on poorpress.net. 100% of the proceeds goes to support Homefulness, a homeless people's solution to homelessness. Um, Books that are purchased in some of these live events, like the one in occupied Coast Miwok, will 50% of those proceeds will go to those relatives. That's how we did it in Duwamish territory. 50% of that went to Rick Williams, the family of John T. Williams, who was murdered by so-called Seattle PD for being houseless and indigenous and a wood carver in that downtown settler town. So we urge you to come through or go to poorpress.net. There's also, for those of you who can't make it this Saturday, we'll also be in Ochun on Saturday, April 26th at 3 p.m. A lot of other warriors will be there as well, Vic and Karina. And then in Occupy Ilamu, so-called San Francisco, at City Lights Books. Shout out to City Lights. Shout out to Eastside Arts Alliance for hosting, for welcoming us in. At City Lights, it'll be May 20th, which is a Tuesday night. It's kind of crazy to do things on a Tuesday night, but please come through, 6 o'clock, meet all the relatives, listen to the prayer, be part of this movement. Thank you, Vic, so much. If you want to hang out, we're going to bring in Dee, though. Come on in, Dee.
Come on, Dee, right here.
Dee's a powerful poem warrior who's an amazing author, and we have the blessing of having a couple of his pieces in the book. So we're going to hold on one sec because Dee's preparing. And as we wait for that, I want to remind folks they are listening and watching PNNKEXU. That's Poor People's Revolutionary Radio, where I CNN, we PNN. How about that, people? We welcome you all for being here, for staying tuned, for listening to this medicine. And shout out to Tibu, who's got us on the digital streets here. We love you. All right, go for it, Dee.
From pages 262 and 263 in the book. This is called Rusty Gallows. Reddish-brown corrosion covers the whole structure like a filthy blanket. With so much widespread decay, that old tarnished bridge should have collapsed from crashing waters many floods ago. By some fluke of nature, unscathed by time, it still stands above the muddy Chickasaw River. in Chabuta, Mississippi. Along once a passageway to a long-forgotten Clark County destination, twice an implement of execution like an iron crucifix. This is you, skull and crossbones etched on the bridge's base, cryptic warning meant for anyone unlucky enough to cross it, and the invisible line away from their place. Between both world wars, unspecified parties. Nah, let's rephrase that. Haters strung up 4 boys, 2 girls, both pregnant, young, Negro, and guilty of nothing. Hung from knotted ropes, tied to rusty girders over the coursing river like 6 black flags sailing in the gentle southern wind. Being black shouldn't be a death sentence. Rusty Gallows, inspired by the nonfiction book Hanging Bridge by Jason Morgan Ward, from the book Rusty Gallows, Passages Against Hate, still available from Vagabond Books.
And can you tell us just a little bit about that? What happened there?
There were 2 lynchings that took place during the last century. Each one took place during the couple of world wars that happened last century. There was one that took place in 1918, just as World War I was heating up, then winding down, and that meant the death of like 4 youth, two boys and 2 young pregnant girls. And the second lynching took place in 1942, just as World War II was just heating up and American military involvement was increasing. At that time, two more black youth hung from that bridge, 2 boys this time. So that's 6 deaths total from that same bridge. And to this day, to the best of my knowledge, that bridge has not been torn down at all, like so many other racist monuments have around the world during the year 2020.
So that space is a great example of what we would call a clan mark.
Yep, the Hanging Bridge is without a doubt a clan mark. It was a lynching site twice.
Wow.
It made national news both times during the last century. And then for decades, people just forgot about it.
Wow. Thank you, Dee, so much for this work and for bringing that up. And I just want to say, in the book, there are many clan marks of Black, brown, indigenous, and disabled relatives all across occupied Turtle Island and Palestine and Kashmir. And, of course, Mauna Kea and all of the islands peoples as well. So, again, these are an international process, of course, to honor the genocidal maniacs. But we have a special knack for it in occupied Turtle Island. And so, again, learn about these, unwashed together with us.
And this is the history that the public schools in the American states of Texas and Florida have eliminated from their libraries and their curriculum. Black history down there is, in those 2 places, are almost non-existent.
Yeah.
Even Oklahoma, they don't talk about the 1921 destruction of Greenwood Avenue, also known as Black Wall Street, in any of the public schools. And to add to this history, recently, back in February or March, the new U.S. Secretary of Defense, Peter Hedgepeth, the alcoholic in chief of the Secretary of Defense, wants to have books that talk about the Holocaust, about racism, about lynching, about homophobia removed from the libraries at military installations.
Wow.
So So that's part of a new trend that's been going on since President Trump has taken a second term. A war or straight up crackdown on diversity, equality, and inclusion, DEI, formerly known as affirmative action.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Dee. Thank you also to Vic. We're going to take a short music break. We'll be right back with more from Poor People's Radio. That's right. That's PNN, not CNN, people. Other amazing stories, chronicles, poetry, prayer, just love, written and created and walked and lived by Auntie Karina Gould, by Vic, by the warriors from so-called Kelseyville, aka Pomo lands, that are taking back that towns and renaming by folks from Lenape, from the Poor People's Army. There are so many warriors, so much medicine in this book. So again, come through this Saturday, April 12th, at the site of the Blight, the site of the Blight of the pedophile known as Junipero Serra, who was thankfully removed, as all the Settler Blight should be, from that mission system, so that at least our warriors, our indigenous relatives, and our ancestors don't need to be haunted by a several foot tall concrete monument of a genocidal maniac. This and other powerful unwashing stories are what you have in store for you. Again, this Saturday, April 12th at 1 p.m. at the so-called San Rafael Mission. Then also, if you can't make that one, it will be in Deep East Uchun at the beautiful Eastside Arts Alliance on Saturday, April 26th at 3 p.m. And then again, another option is in Occupied Yulamu at City Lights Books, May 20th at 6 p.m.
So that's all for these broadcasts of Poor People's Radio. You can follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, Poor Magazine, at Poverty Scholar, and Poor News Network on YouTube. You can also get this complete Poor People's Radio podcast with all the interviews and conversations or any of our previous archives shows on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, or whatever you get your podcast from. All power to the people.